Hey everybody, welcome back to the Eugene Morning Hustle podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look into the vibrant art scene of Eugene. Our special guest here is going to be sharing some insights on how the ecosystem is evolving and what it needs to continue thriving. Let's get into it.
What's up, Eugene? You're listening to the Eugene Morning Hustle podcast, brought to you by the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. We're your hosts, Brandon Miller and Ivan Torres, and like us, we know you'd like to know what's going on in your city, socially, economically, civically, and culturally. From events to guest interviews and professional and personal development tips, each week we bring you stories of local business owners, advocates, leaders, and everyday Eugenians sharing how they've strengthened their roots to reach a little deeper in our community and how you can too. We are welcoming to the podcast Kelly Johnson of the Arts and Business Alliance of Eugene, and she's going to be here to talk to us about advocacy, about art and business, and about Eugene's robust art scene. And welcome to the podcast, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. Would you introduce kind of what the Arts and Business Alliance of Eugene does and also kind of your role?
Absolutely. So the Arts and Business Alliance of Eugene was founded after the Eugene city government performed what they called a cultural policy review. So they had some consultants come in and take a look at our arts and culture system and how it was supported. And they made a bunch of different recommendations for how we could grow, support the wonderful arts ecosystem that we had here. And so one of the recommendations that came out of this report was that they felt like our ecosystem here could benefit from more partnership and collaboration between the arts community and the business community. And so at that time, the city came together with a few other partners, including the University of Oregon, Lane Community College, Travelling County, and the Eugene Chamber of Commerce.
We've heard of it.
Yeah, right? To start doing work under that mantle of like what could be possible when arts and business work together. Both the arts ecosystem is more vibrant, stable, well-funded, and then the business community has a really thriving, vibrant city to work in. And so our goal now is to just really drive investment to preserve and enhance Eugene's cultural and creative vibrancy.
And so what's your role there again?
I'm the executive director.
Executive director.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you've been with the organization for a while, is that right?
Yeah, since about 2018.
Okay, nice. Very good.
Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about, since you've been with the organization for a while, what is the art scene like? When you describe it to people that don't live in Eugene, how would you describe that?
Well, it's my favorite topic of discussion,
I could imagine.
To be honest with you. But I'm just always really amazed. You know, we have like a really top tier, high quality arts and culture scene here in Eugene that has been growing for really decades. You think of the rich ecosystem we have today, and I'm always just really grateful for all of the generations who have put in the hard work so that we're enjoying this thriving arts ecosystem. You know, we have arts organizations like the Very Little Theater or Eugene Springfield Youth Orchestras that are 100 years old. And then about 50 years ago, there was this really just spring of creativity in Eugene, and there's all these arts organizations that have about a 50-year-old history. So things like the Eugene Symphony, the concert choir, the ballet, Saturday Market, Oregon Country Fair. Like, what an exciting time to like live in Eugene and see all of this stuff that was popping up. And then that led to things like the Holt Center being built because we had all these like amazing art groups. So we're living in this amazing ecosystem with things like the Shed and the Holt Center and the Wow Hall and the McDonald Theater because all these people spent so much time building it. And so that makes me excited to not only want to preserve this great asset that we have in our community, but think about what are we doing today that 50 years from now our youth or our generations are enjoying what we are building and growing in our arts ecosystem today.
Wow, what a rich history that's kind of right here, right in our community.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So I know when we were talking prior, we talked about, you actually mentioned this, the Big A Arts.
Yeah.
Right? So just to let everyone know that's listening or watching, the arts aren't limited to the things that we generally associate the arts, right? Could you explain that?
Yeah, I think sometimes when people hear arts or arts and culture, they think of like one thing. They might think of like a big museum or a kind of classical arts experience. And I think that those are both great experiences, but I think it's a lot more broad than that. The arts are murals on our buildings as we walk by. They're the song you heard on the radio when you came in. They're literature, poetry. There is so much happening in our community that has an artistic flow or feel to it. I mean, even a podcast like this has some creative energy. And so I just see arts everywhere. So sometimes people will be like, well, I'm not really an arts person. And I go, I bet somewhere in your life you get to experience some art or some enjoyment. And so it's really wide, it's broad, it's theater, it's dance, it's music, it's singing, it's so much in our community.
As far as art here in Eugene, what would you say is a problem or a roadblock that we're running into?
I mean, I really think that particularly coming out of the pandemic, arts and culture was hit pretty hard, as you can imagine. And the world has just really shifted in a post-pandemic world. All kinds of businesses had to completely change their business models nearly overnight. And I think in arts and culture, it's been really about rebuilding audiences, right? People kind of got out of the habit of going to the symphony or to that local concert. And so they're really having to rebuild new audiences, have people return, but get new folks in. And I think that just takes time. And while we're rebuilding, we don't want to lose these groups, and so I think making sure we're supporting them financially, we're getting back going to those experiences is the ways that we can start supporting and rebuilding the strength of our local arts institutions and organizations.
How does our community find out about arts going-ons, the different things that are happening in our community? What's the best way, or some of the best ways, for our community to find out about those things? Is it the newspaper? Is it some online publication? Is it some publication on the corner of the street that somebody can pick up and find out what's happening?
I really, there's a couple of different things I would recommend. I think that the Eugene Weekly usually has a pretty great calendar in their publication and online. Traveling County actually has a great listing of everything that's happening and that's county-wide and even goes beyond arts and culture. But I really love looking at their calendar. And then honestly, I follow a lot of the organizations, like newsletters or on social media. People are always like, how do you always know what's going on? And I'm like, I subscribe to a lot of things. But those are some great ways to get involved. The Arts and Business Alliance of Eugene actually has an arts guide on our website that is not really focused on events, more just kind of like the institutions that are around. But you could still go on there and say, I'm really interested in dance and filter through the dance options, and then maybe follow a few of your locals to get kind of that sort of instant or ongoing reminders of what's going on, because it can be a little difficult to get on everything because there's so much wonderful things happening.
I bet it becomes a trickle effect a little bit almost. You find one and then that leads to another, and certainly the people you keep meeting in those circles, right? It just keeps kind of growing.
Absolutely, 100%, yeah.
What sort of projects are you working on right now with the organization to help support or grow what's happening here in Eugene? I know that when we talked about kind of where Oregon or where Eugene ranks for the arts, it's pretty low, which is surprising for how robust it is here in the city. Why is that?
Yeah, so a couple things that we're working on. So one thing is playing a bigger role in arts advocacy. So as you mentioned, the last legislative sessions were a little bit disappointing when it came to funding for arts and culture. There was some funding that came out, but it was discovered in that process that Oregon actually ranks 41st in terms of state funding for the arts, which it kind of blew my mind a little bit. So I think that we want to change that, and through advocacy, working on making sure people see all of the benefits that arts and culture have, both the more community development benefits, but then the economic benefits that it has on our community as well can help change that conversation, but we have to be active in it and active in that advocacy all the time, not just when these like moments happen, like, oh, we're in a session right now, we need to go to Salem. We need to be having those conversations all the time, reminding people how important arts are to our community and showing them how to get involved. So we're going to be playing a bigger role in that, and hopefully also just sort of raising the collective Eugene Springfield voice, because the funding that did come through mostly did not come to Eugene. And so we want to make sure that our whole state is getting arts funding, and that Eugene is seen as sort of a leader in our state for arts and culture.
How can someone, whether they're somebody who frequents, maybe they go to the Holt Center a couple times a year and to see a show, to somebody who is fully invested, maybe they have an art business, maybe they have a very involved hobby, or maybe they're a part of some clubs. How can two ends of that spectrum almost get involved and help raise awareness to say, hey, we are a vibrant community here. We kind of deserve some of this funding to grow art and culture in our community. What can they do?
I think it's about staying aware, and that's, again, something we're hoping to help kind of do, is make people aware of the moments when advocacy can make a difference, when they can call their local counselor, commissioner, state rep and say, this matters to me, and I want it to continue in our community. So if there's specific initiatives or bills being put forward, that hopefully we can communicate that out to the community and let people know when we need them and their voice to get involved.
You had mentioned that there's an event that you have that is a huge part of what you do. Could you explain a little bit about that? And that, I imagine, has something to tie into awareness, right?
Yeah, so in the spring, we have our Brava event. This past year, we held it at the McDonald Theater, which was really fun. And it is, we give out community awards. So we give out an award for sort of an excellent artist in the community that has done a lot, both professionally in their craft and in that kind of advocacy for just arts in the community. We give an award for an arts organization, a particularly neat arts and business partnership, and then a business that has gone above and beyond in their kind of support of arts and culture. We usually have a little music. We had a performer. We had a great MC, and JC Geiger was there, and it's just a really fun celebration of the arts. And some of our event partners, Athena Deline, really wanted to make sure we had a karaoke machine there, which I was like, okay. And then it was a big hit. Yeah. You want to have a party, invite all the arts people, and make sure there's a karaoke machine, because it was a blast. Yeah.
Brilliant. Aside from like the legislature and like putting in for that, what other things? How else can one support the arts and culture?
I think a lot of it is just becoming a patron, right? Like getting out there and going to shows. I mean, think about how much time, energy, creative work goes into putting on a ballet or a play at your local theater. And so we want to see those houses full. We want people to come out and experience it. I mean, what is super cool about living in Eugene and having such a rich ecosystem is those people on stage are your neighbors, you know, they're your colleagues, they're your friends. You can run into them at the grocery store, and they're immensely talented. I mean, I don't know how many stories I've heard of these sort of like, I almost refer to them as like these secret Eugenians that have like just really deep wells of creativity and artistic expression that it's outstanding. But I think number one is just attending, going. Maybe if you wanted to join a board and help with the leadership of an organization, that's always an option. And then supporting financially, making donations. If you're a business, maybe a sponsorship. It's a great way to make sure that these arts experiences are around for everybody.
So when we're talking about the arts in our community, where is it concentrated? Where's like most of the art happening in our community? A lot of our arts and culture assets are located in our downtown area.
There are, also great arts experiences in the Whitaker or at the university, but a lot of our arts institutions are located sort of in our downtown area. So again, we have the Shed, the Wow Hall, the McDonald, the Holt Center. There's galleries like New Zone or Carr & Clark or White Lotus that you can really get to. I mean, if you go to like a Lane Arts Council First Friday Art Walk and you walk around, it's sort of when you start to think about, oh yeah, everything's sort of right here in walking distance, and you can pop around and go to John Henry's or the Big Dirty or the new comedy club, and it's all pretty centrally located in our downtown area, which is great.
Have you found it to be somewhat of a challenge at all? I know there's a little bit of stuff happening in our downtown area and things are starting to improve a little bit. Have you noticed any sort of challenges with that and trying to bring people back downtown? Certainly since COVID. Has that been an issue at all, or have people been pretty loyal coming downtown for that sort of thing?
I mean, I think maybe a little bit, but I think, again, it's where all the stuff is happening. And what I get excited about is when I see that the arts activities are drawing people in. And I think once you have a lot of people concentrated in an area, it makes it feel better, it makes it feel safer. And so again, like thinking this past First Friday, I went to several different places downtown. I walked around, I was alone. But there were hundreds of other people, there at First Friday. There was dancing at the Farmers Market Pavilion. It was really amazing. Making friends at a gallery with some strangers, walking to the next one together. I mean, it's when you get everybody in downtown going to those things that then it has that vibrant nature, and it kind of helps alleviate some of that. Of the issues.
Well, you just said it. We're kind of the solution for that, right?
Yeah.
The people, getting people to come to these live events to witness art in many different forms helps to create this atmosphere that is safe and joyful and that sort of thing. That sounds great.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, and we're doing that with the low ranking of 41st.
Right.
What would it look like to rank higher or get additional funding for Oregon and Eugene? I mean, how does that look?
I mean, that's what I think gets me really excited is like what would even be possible if we were like well-funded. These arts groups are creative, right? They're used to being scrappy and getting by on like trickles of funding. But I mean, what even would be possible if they were fully funded, if our artists could be better paid, right? Like could make a living wage being a musician in Eugene. And I just think it would be wonderful, and I think what is exciting about that too is that return on investment. So the Arts and Business Alliance was really excited to lead some work on the economic impact the arts have on our local economy. And it's astounding. In Eugene, our nonprofit local arts and culture scene generates $124 million of economic activity.
Yeah.
And so you imagine if all of those organizations were better funded, had more support, could do more programming downtown, bring more stuff in, that's only going to increase that amount of economic activity that our local nonprofit arts and culture organization put into the community.
It sounds like not only it engages the people living here, but it sounds like it would draw more people to our community, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in that study, it sort of breaks down how many visitors come in, what they're spending. The visitors spend something like twice as much as the locals when they're here because, they have to maybe stay the night. Maybe they make a bigger night out of it. But it was $33 million of that is spending by audiences above and beyond their ticket price. So that's them going out to dinner. That's them parking, and of that 33 million, 10 million of it was visitor spending. So people coming from outside Lane County here because we have all these rich arts assets. And that was I think it was about 150,000 people coming from outside the county to see shows, with the arts experience being the primary motivator of their trip. So that was one of the questions was, are you here from something else? And like, you're going to an arts experience. But I think 78% said, no, we're here because this wasn't offered in our community. We wanted to see it, and Eugene had it.
That's so neat.
Yeah.
So COVID, terrible time, of course, and it was a huge impact on the arts community. But was there anything positive that came out of it? Maybe a new creative way that people were doing art, or?
I mean, I think so. I think that people got really creative, and I mentioned business models changing, and like some of that's good, right? One side of it is accessibility, like things going maybe online that hadn't ever been before. People even just asking the question, like, how do we get this out to more people? How do we engage with online audiences? I think also just sort of the support systems of like artists coming together because it was so hard, of like either a visual artist or a music group or dancers coming together and saying like, how do we do this? And then I think those networks and those systems have stayed in place, right? So those networks of support have continued after the fact. But I definitely think it just pushed people to like question, how are we doing this? Can we be doing it better? And I think a lot of that has made our arts groups more innovative and stronger.
Well, so let's talk a little bit more about the data here. So what is happening when it comes to the numbers here in our city?
Yeah, and again, it's pretty phenomenal. So this study that we do is created from Americans for the Arts, is the national kind of research and advocacy organization. And this past time around, they worked with 400 cities throughout the country, 20 in Oregon, which was great that we had such great representation. But it looks at, okay, what are audiences spending locally when they come to arts and culture? And then what are those arts and culture organizations spending out in the community as well, which gives you that kind of like total impact number. And I can get really nerdy about this study. I've delved into lots of spreadsheets, but they create these cohorts based on city size. And so our cohort is of populations between 100,000 and 250. And so there's about 63 cities within our cohort, cities like Boulder, Colorado, Tacoma, Washington, Oceanside, California, Salem, Oregon. And out of these 63 cities, Eugene ranked 10th. And I think about 5 of those cities that are above us have like population sizes more on the top end. So again, it just shows that like Eugene is really punching well above its weight class when it comes to this economic impact that arts and culture have. And so I mentioned a little bit about the audience spending, but it's also the spending by organizations. Sometimes I think people forget that nonprofits are businesses too. And so it's $90 million that is getting spent out through our arts organizations because, we're employers, we're hiring people, we need services, we need websites and tax people and printers. And so it's a big chunk of our local economy is just having all these rich arts and culture organizations. I think that's about it.
Well, we have all the numbers here.
Yeah.
We could flash them up on screen. That's the thing. But we'll flash some of them on screen just to show the audience kind of what that means because you provided that slide.
Yeah.
And that's going to be great.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking about all of the the excitement that you had for what's happening in our community. Do you have any success stories that come to mind of things since you've been with the organization since 2018 and you're like, boy, I got to tell you, this thing that we did was so impactful to our arts and culture here in Eugene?
One thing that comes to mind is more of like a partnership. I don't know if necessarily like we had complete hands on it, but it's just, I think it's a beautiful illustration of what can happen when business and arts comes together. But the Holt Center has this really great series called the 10 by 10 concert series. And they've been doing it for a couple years now. And what it is emerging musicians coming to play at the Holt Center in the Soaring Theater. So they maybe have some kind of following, but they're not a huge national name yet. And so it's sort of like a come get experience. The Holt Center does all this amazing stuff for them in terms of like maybe additional video content that they can get out there, really supporting their development as musicians. And the tickets for these concerts are $10.
Yeah.
I have been to I think 10 of them now over the past 2 or 3 years. And I've loved every single one.
Yeah, I've been to one, and it was so funny how it happened too. I didn't know about it until I was on Instagram. The Terrell group posted something about it, and I don't know if I commented on it or I interacted with the post somehow. And then they said, hey, we're giving you some tickets. And I was like, cool. So then I went to that. Whoa, that is a really intimate experience.
It's wonderful.
I felt like it was for me.
Yeah, it's so amazing. And so it's accessible at a $10 price point. I just went to one like last week or something. It was this wonderful band called Buffalo Kin from Fossil, Oregon. And again, like I would never have known this band, and I had such a great time. Loved it. But the Terrell group, thanks for mentioning them, they sponsored it. So I think the Holt Center wanted to keep that accessible price, but obviously like they want to pay the artists well. And they're like, how could we even do this, make this happen? And the Terrell group was like, we'll sponsor it. We'll give you a runway so that you're financially covered until you can grow it, and so that it's selling out and you can recoup the costs. But like, we'll sort of underwrite it for 3 years. They gave marketing support as well. And so like, that's like a great art business partnership, right? Dana and the Terrell group saw the value that this could bring to the community, saw it as a great way to show their community support. They use it. They give away tickets to employees, customers, as they use it as a fringe benefit. And then we get this amazing asset in these 10 by 10 concerts. And then to layer like another cool layer of partnership on it, they make kind of custom posters for each concert that you can kind of collect. And so it's a local designer designing those posters. And so there's just all these ways that like, it'd be cool, but it's like 10 times cooler when those collaborations and partnerships come together. And then we benefit as the community because we get this really rich experience.
And it feels robust because there's so much, like it's like something new every time, you know, it's like fresh, you know, and like you said, you're pulling people from Fossil, Oregon and other places that we probably should know more about. But you're giving this stage of and sharing art, right? Because this sounds are different in different parts of Oregon and in different parts of the country and the world, and being able to share that in a place like Eugene, Oregon is pretty special.
It's wonderful, yeah.
So you really touched on you know, some ways that businesses can get involved, like sponsorships and different types of ways of supporting the arts. What are some other ways that you encourage businesses in our community to be like, well, here's how you can get involved. Your company cares about art and culture. Here are the things that you can do.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I get to witness lots of different creative partnerships. You know, I think sometimes businesses will be giving support financially to an arts organization just as sort of community outreach or community development. So that's always welcome. I think sometimes people get really creative with those partnerships. Like we said, maybe there's sometimes an exchange of tickets, and those can be used for your employee engagement. Or kind of customer relations. I think that's a great way that businesses can kind of, you know, see some impact in their business where their employees feel really special. They get to go to this thing for free. And then, you know, maybe that's developing the art audience more for that arts group. Maybe that employee wants to go again next time. So it's sort of like this win-win. Lots of the arts organizations have kind of programs for advertising, things like that. I know arts groups are always looking for volunteers or board members. Again, another way businesses can kind of get involved. I know a lot of businesses nowadays have volunteer programs where you can kind of go out and, you know, help clean up, you know, the WOW Hall or something like that, or volunteer to usher or something like that. And so there's just so many ways that like even business professionals getting on a board can share their expertise, right? You know, I think of my board members and I'm so grateful to each and every one of them because they help level up our organization. And so even you're like, I don't know what I could give back. I don't know what I could do. There's something that like an arts organization would be so happy to have, like your insight, your expertise, helping them grow or be more sustainable here in Eugene.
You talked about, you know, tickets going to employees and things like that if businesses, get involved in that way. What are some ways that businesses can involve their employees in art and culture, and why is that important for businesses to engage their employees in art and culture?
I think creativity is so important in kind of any industry you have. It's honestly, I think it's like number one or number two when you look at these like HR reports of like when they're looking for new hires, that creativity is a skill that is an asset in any industry, right? And so I think developing creative skills, no matter what industry you're in, is important. And as a business leader, have an artist come in and do a workshop, have a creative break where you take your team out to Mecca, grab some supplies, make something creative. We have a few videos on our website led by local artists. They're called our Creative Academy. And they're just that. There are local, amazing artists doing kind of quick exercises, whether it is kind of making something, or there's a couple kind of more writing geared ones that you don't really need any supplies for or talent or expertise like previous experience. But it just gets you thinking different. It gets you out of the kind of everyday ordinary, and like what better teachers than our local creatives to like help you tap into your creativity.
So I think there's a thing, and I can't remember the term, but it has to do with like creative anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Where you want to get involved, but you're nervous because what if the thing you're making doesn't look like the picture that, they're showing up, and they're embarrassed and they don't want to get involved. And now it's this big anxious thing. What message do you have for people out there that have this sort of creative anxiety? And it's like, I just want you to get over it, but how?
I think that a lot of what arts has to teach us when we get involved in the creation of art is that it's about the process. It's not usually about the end product. I think even most professional artists go in just thinking about the process that they're doing and not necessarily towards the end product. And so I just think, sometimes you can do this in a group setting, but even if you're alone by yourself, like just play. There is something even special kind of just taking that time to play, even if you mess up, even if it's not like perfect, that you're going to learn something out of it. And the process is going to be just as important as that end outcome.
I have to imagine that your brain almost has like a switch that goes off when you are in that creative process, no matter who you are, right?
Absolutely. There's actually just recently a book that came out in the last couple of years called Your Brain on Art. That talks about all these examples. They call it neuroarts, on how engaging with arts, whether you're a beholder or a maker, like changes your brain function. Whether it's listening to music or making art or dance, that there's real big physical and mental health benefits for engaging with the arts.
Would you say that we don't laugh enough?
I definitely think so. I definitely think so.
You were talking about brain chemistry and how the arts really open us up. And I feel like laughter is a big part of that, especially in the workplace, where we just don't get to do that very often. What are some ways you encourage people to laugh more?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I think sometimes just trying something different.
Yeah.
I think we get so into our patterns, which is one of the reasons like I love the 10 by 10 shows, right? Or anything. I think about this experience I had actually when I was out serving for the economic study, where I had to go to a million events to get all this survey and data. And so sometimes there was a lot of people at these events. Sometimes there were not a lot of people. It was a really big, broad variety. And sometimes I'd be like, I'm going to go to this one. There's not going to be a lot of people there. And so I have my bag with all my surveying equipment and I show up at this event and there's like 200, 300 people there. It was a marimba concert. I had no experience with that, but there's like a whole community here in Eugene of people that play marimba, and it's joyful and it's fun and people were dancing and like, right? It was just something that I never would have like naturally gone to. I didn't know much about that community, and now I'll go anytime I see a marimba concert because it was joyful and I wanted to laugh and I wanted to do something. So I would just say like, get out of your comfort zone, like try something new, go pop into that gallery or that show or whatever, and I would imagine you're going to get joy out of it.
I love that. So we've talked a lot about the arts. Let's talk about culture. Okay, what's the difference? And I know there's crossover, but is there a difference between arts and culture, or is it one and the same, or you can't have one without the other? And what does that look like when we talk about getting outside of your comfort zone, getting outside of your culture zone?
I mean, I think it's just encouraging people to explore and be curious, right? I don't know that I would have a definition one way or another, but I just think, again, like if you scratch the surface of Eugene, you're going to find so much rich arts, culture. There's things happening all over that are going to broaden your experience, your horizon, your understanding of other people. And I think we have a richness here to explore.
Love that.
Wow. Kelly, how did you get involved with this? Like, what's your favorite form of art? What?
Well, I'm a theater nerd, so I went my undergrad degree is in theater, not as a performer, but more of as a backstage kind of person. So I was on lighting crew and run crew and kind of like moving scenery for plays. I remember I had to do this one show where I was like the operator for a trapdoor. So like I had to like open it up so the actor could fall through, and it was very stressful.
Don't miss it. Too early.
But so I just have always really loved theater. It's so much fun to me to get to experience something that's different every night. You know, like every performance is a little bit different. They're not the same. And I read this really beautiful thing once that said when you're watching theater or when you're probably any live performance that the heartbeats of your audience sync together. So like not only is it this great experience that like the actors get to do something different every night or you're getting a different show, but like the unique mix of the people in the audience also gives like the energy and the vibe and like a sense of community that I've just always really enjoyed.
Boy, I love that. That's awesome. That reminds me of laughter also. When everybody's laughing in the audience and you're all strangers.
Yeah.
For that split moment, you all feel like family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
Never thought of that. That's true.
Feels really unifying, right? Like, oh my gosh, we all got to see this super special thing that like nobody ever is going to get to see the same exact moment of.
Wow. That was deep.
Have you lived in Oregon your whole life or?
No, I'm originally from Colorado.
Oh, okay.
I moved out here to go to grad school at the U of O to get a degree in arts administration. And I always say I grew up in a really small town and then I lived in Denver, which is sort of a bigger city. And so Eugene's like the perfect Goldilocks for me. Like it still has that small town vibe where, you know, I can walk down the street to a coffee shop and run into a bunch of people that you kind of know. But then, you know, I get great arts experience, Broadway, I can go to a football game, basketball game. Like it has, I think, the perfect medium of kind of both those experiences.
I think you really captured kind of what Eugene is like in the arts and culture that we have here, and it's so rich and vibrant. What do you see for the future? What do you want for the future of Eugene when it comes to arts and culture? What do you want to see more of or less of? Or
You know, I think I always am just going to strive for kind of more investment in the arts again, because I think more investment means that both the artists and creators are getting taken care of. So, you know, livable wages for our local artists. And if there's also more investment, that makes it easy to make it accessible for everyone. You know, what I don't ever want to happen is people to feel like they can't go to an experience because of like a price point, right? And so when you have either some kind of investment making it possible to make art accessible to the most people, I think that's really amazing. Again, I just really want to think about what we want for the future, like all those people 50 years ago. So I would love to see actually another performing venue in Eugene. You know, I think we have a really good collection, but our city's growing, right? And so I've heard from people that, either need a rehearsal space or want a performance space, and all of ours are full. And so I think maybe some kind of middle ground theater, like 1,000 seats, some kind of theater like that. The Silva at the Holt Center is, I think, about 2,500, and then the Soaring is about 500. But I don't know that we have that kind of middle ground, which also helps with the growth and development of our organizations, right? It gives them kind of options for different sizes of audiences.
Well, people are listening and watching right now, so they're taking note that they're going to find somebody to build that.
Yeah.
1,000 seats coming right up.
Yeah. Do you have is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you're wanting to make sure that our listeners take to heart?
I just think we have something really special here, and I think I mentioned it a little bit, but there's something super special about having such a rich ecosystem of local artists. I love going to any arts and culture experience. When I travel, I always try to do it because I think you mentioned it's great to get those kind of experiences when you're in somewhere different. But there's something so special of walking down to Saturday Market and buying something from the artists themselves usually, right? Or thinking about, the inspiration for this choreography you saw at the Eugene Ballet or Ballet Fantastique that was inspired when that person was walking on the trail by the Willamette, and you can kind of sense the same thing because you experience it, or see a neighbor on stage playing for at the jazz station, right? It's it's our community, and it always just fills me with such a great sense of pride about what creative energy we have here. And so I just encourage people to explore it, right? Go out, play, see stuff, get involved, make sure that it's around for future generations.
Oh, so great. It's a great message. Do you want to get into our next segment?
Let's do it.
Yep,
This is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all this. This is really cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to a show in a few weeks. I'm going to Hadestown.
Oh my God, it's so good.
I haven't seen it yet. So.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's the show on the Broadway season that I just saw a couple months ago. And I'm everybody has to go see Hadestown. It's so good.
Alrighty, everybody. So we're to the part of the show where we get to know our guests a little bit better. So Kelly, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
When you're not at work, how do you like to spend your time?
I like to spend my time reading. I'm a big reader. I've always really loved reading. And then I also really enjoy getting outside. My husband and I are big campers. We like to go hiking, camping. I am also a big football fan, which is probably a little bit bizarre for an arts person.
Hey, that's an art too.
Cheering on our Ducks. Love that.
Perfect. What are you reading right now?
I read a lot of romance novels, to be honest.
Yeah.
I just love getting swept away in a good romance story.
Where do you like to go camping?
Kind of anywhere, sometimes kind of out Oak Ridge in that area, or up kind of 126 and Blue River. I know right now there's probably fires everywhere, which is sad, but we actually like to do a little bit of winter camping sometimes, which can be a little bit cold, but
It's
if you
so
have
fun.
the right equipment,
Yeah.
it's not too bad. Tent, yeah.
Wow.
And so
Nice.
then there's also less people around.
Yeah. That's my favorite time to go is fall and winter because the tourists are gone. You have pretty much the whole space to yourself. So you just have to endure some of the rain.
Yeah.
You have to endure some of the snow, but otherwise it's fine.
It's a good sleeping bag in your set.
Yeah. And the fire, so that'll be good.
Yeah.
Growing up, what was the first career you dreamed of?
Oh gosh. I've always really just wanted to be in the arts, particularly in theater. I think when I was really young, I wanted to be more of a performer, and then just realized through my skill set that I was better suited as an administrator. But I remember I had like a wall of teddy bears, and I would give my like Academy Award speech to them when I was like little. So I just always really wanted to be involved in arts and culture.
I love that.
Usually what we'll ask is, so are you still doing something with that? And yes, you are definitely doing something with
Living the
it.
dream.
You might as well be in the heartbeat of it right now.
Sheesh. No, that's really neat. And I wanted to throw this in there too. I was also in theater in high school, and I didn't even know that I wanted to do that until I got to high school, but I'm so glad that I did, because it was like the best experience. I also learned that I was not a good actor, so I was on lights and audio, and that was fine.
Yeah.
It was so amazing.
And I was the opposite. I was really the one that was meant to be on stage because I didn't know how to handle all that equipment.
Until the day.
Yeah, right. Even still today. Yeah.
Well, I think that's so important, though. I hear that a lot, and it's not just through theater, but I hear that a lot of like people when they're in their kind of educational careers, like, oh, I had this great experience with a music teacher or a theater teacher or an art teacher, which they might not have continued to do that work, but it helped them feel belonging or creativity, or like change their high school career in some way, like got something out of it. And so that's why I just also love art.
Exposure. Yeah. Reflecting on your past, what was your earliest memory of art?
So I grew up in a really small town in Colorado called Pine. It has a population of like 75 people.
Nice.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so, but my mom was an interior designer. She was really into art, and she had these like books that were like the museums of the world, like the Prado and the Louvre, and we would just kind of open them up at all and like make a little gallery of these like art museums of the world to kind of like look at. And so that's like kind of what I think of as the first memory, is like just like seeing these places all over the world that you could go to from my like small town in Colorado.
Wow.
So you got to basically set up the experience for yourself there and bring art to your home. Mm-hmm. So that being said, have you been to any of those museums?
I have. I've been to Paris, and then I've been to London. So a lot of the big museums there, like the Tate Modern and National Gallery, National Portrait Gallery. It's always like a really fun experience.
What museum or what sort of art installment do you want to see anywhere in the world?
Oh, geez. This is kind of nerdy and taking it back to theater, but it actually was here. Oh. So at the JSMA, one year they had a touring exhibit of one of the Shakespeare folios. So one of the first folios of Shakespeare's work was like here in Eugene at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art. And so I just always love looking at those like really old books. And so that was pretty special.
Wow. Very cool.
It's already been moved?
Yeah, this was a couple of years ago that they had it.
Why do you think people say that they aren't creative?
I think it's a little bit of that fear of perfection, I mean, I really think everybody's creative, and I think everybody has art in their life in some way, to some degree. But I think in terms of creativity, I think it can be really scary to say like, oh, I'm creative, because then people are like, oh, let me, like, how, let me see it. And I just think that that's not really the point. I really do think it's like the journey, the process, and never kind of what you get out of it, what you learn about it. But I think there's that real fear of like the production or the product or what you have to show for it that
totally
limits people.
Yeah. Yeah. What surprises people about you?
Oh.
We already know about the football.
This is probably weird, but I don't like melted cheese.
Wow, okay.
Like,
what do you do with your burgers?
I don't have them with cheese, but like I will pull I will pull the cheese like off of pizza. Like I'll eat pizza, but I'll either make it without cheese or I'll pull it off. but it's like, I think it must be a texture thing or something because I love like fake nacho cheese. It's like not stringy, like the machine pump kind
Liquid
of cheese. You're like, that's great. But like if it gets to like stringiness at all, I cannot do it.
So the fried mozzarella sticks are just like
no. And a pizza, like burritos with like cheese in them. I just do everything without cheese.
Interesting.
Melted cheese. I'm
so surprised.
I know. It's weird.
Can we cancel lunch?
No pizza. What is the best advice you've ever been given?
Oh my goodness. I guess this is the first thing that comes to mind, but my job before the Arts and Business Alliance, I worked at Shelter Care, which is another nonprofit in town. And the person that hired me is actually Mayor Venice. So she was working at Shelter Care at the time. And she was such a great role model in many ways. And she really pushed me out of my comfort zone in lots of different areas. I'm naturally an introvert, so I had to go to like a lot of networking things that I didn't want to go to. And like, she really pushed me in that way. But she recommended that I join Toastmasters to work on public speaking. And again, very hesitant, did not want to do it. And it was probably the best professional development thing that I ever did.
Really?
Public speaking has been a part of every job I've done, and I think will continue to do. And I don't think I'm an expert in any way, but going to Toastmasters, practicing public speaking in like a comfortable, fun space was, it was just really amazing experience. I met cool people. I probably should still be going, but it was just that push of like, take the time out of your day to do something that scares you and like work on a skill that in a way that you wouldn't get to if you weren't involved in something like that. Like having a weekly thing to go to and just practice public speaking. I don't think I take that time out to develop any skill right now. So it was a great push to find something to work on, but like then be consistent about it.
That's so good. And Toastmasters, I've never heard of this.
Yeah. So it's like a, I guess, international probably group where you just go work on public speaking. So there's like, when I went, it was weekly meetings where one person would give a prepared speech based on certain goals that you're trying to achieve. But there'd also be something called like hot topics where it was like more improv almost speaking. You try to drop your ums, which I just did. There's usually somebody like counting your ums for you, your so or your filler words to give you feedback on your speech. And then that's the other piece of it is somebody is usually assigned to give feedback after you give your speech. So you also get to practice feedback. So it was great.
Really neat.
Yeah, it was a great professional development.
It's kind of like what we did before Kelly was here, and we were improving, coming up with some things. It was like that, except you're in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah,
I could find it. I could. That would definitely be helpful for me. So you already talked about a book. Any podcasts or anything you're currently listening to?
I listen to a lot of reading podcasts, particularly about romance novels. So I listen to a couple podcasts, one called Book Riot, which is more general about books and reading, and then one that's called Win in Romance, which is just about romance novels.
Love it. Perfect.
So I like to ask this question to everybody because this is a question that everybody has a different answer, and I feel like you're going to have a very creative answer. What's a hidden gem in Eugene?
Oh gosh, a hidden gem. This is a new hidden gem for me. I actually just discovered this on my first Friday Art Walk. Oh, can I give two?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, please.
So it's High Street Tonics.
Oh yeah.
Have you guys been there?
Yeah, this has been a multiple mention.
Oh my gosh, it was so fun. Yeah, I was on the Art Walk last month, and I went to see an installation that's almost right across the street from them, and then I was like, oh, I'll just pop in there. And it's a sort of non-alcoholic bar, so they have non-alcoholic cocktails. And they had special ones made, speaking of arts and business, for the art walk, like a special art walk menu of drinks.
Neat.
Wow.
So I got a lovely one that was called like Lavender Rain or something, and it was lovely, and it's cute inside, and it was just a really great experience. And another one would come from somewhere that I went the first Friday before that, which was Fuse Jewelry Collective. So it's a shop on 13th that sells jewelry, but you can also make your jewelry there. So they teach you how to make jewelry. Like they even have custom classes for creating wedding bands. So if you're getting married, you can go make your own wedding band there. So it's again one of these places where you can go just buy wonderful locally made jewelry, but then you can like learn how to make it yourself.
That is super neat.
Well, you just gave 3, you know that, right? Because you found out about these through what?
The first Friday Art Walk.
Yes,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we'll make sure to put a link in the show notes to that so people can learn a little bit more about that. And that'll open up their world to some of these fun places that you got to experience.
Absolutely. It's a great time.
Awesome. Well, do you have any a message for Eugene? It could be a piece of advice. It could be a call to action. It could just be something to ponder. It could have something to do with the arts and culture or not at all. But do you have anything for our community where you're like, I got this message that I'd like to share?
I guess I would just say like Eugene is such a great place to live, and it's a great place to live because of its people. Because I'm a little bit more introverted, have just plugged myself into like more smaller groups around town. And every time I do, I meet new people, and I just fall a little bit more in love with Eugene because there's all these great people doing just amazing work in so many areas, that it's like hard not to fall in love with Eugene. We have such great people here, and I think there's just a level of caring, and because our community is the size that it is, you can make a big impact if you want to. And so I would just say get involved, meet somebody new, and get out there and go see some arts and culture.
Love it. One last question. Weekend's coming up. I want to find something to do. What would be the first 3 places that you check?
Traveling County's website, the Eugene Weekly, and I would just go search on Instagram, to be honest with you.
Instagram, just search Eugene, Oregon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I find a lot of stuff that way.
Brilliant. I've never done that. So. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This is awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you,
great.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
As always, that was a great episode.
That was a really good episode. I really liked Kelly's passion, dude. Like, it's good to have people with that kind of drive in those kind of positions.
Well, I'm glad she's the person in here advocating for art in our community.
Yeah. One of the parts that really made me feel good was, and it's something that I hadn't even like really thought of, but whenever she mentioned that, art is more than just painting. I don't know if she uses those exact words, but we were talking about how art is more. Yeah. And, then she mentioned podcasting. I was just like, oh, dang. We really are part of the arts community by bringing people on, and, it's expression, right?
Well, it's storytelling.
Yeah.
Right? Storytelling is art.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. It's really cool to know that, we have this outlet for that, but at the same time, art doesn't have to be just painting or the symphony or acting or anything like that. It could be something simple like doodling on a notepad, or something, more abstract than that even. It could be, forms of gardening, right? That could be art.
Right. And it ultimately, what is the art piece? Is it the Kelly said it's the journey through it, right?
Right, the process.
It's the process. And I think that's so beautiful because, what starts with just a line and somebody else may not be able to see it, the creativity behind the individual that's putting it together who can see it as it's growing, that's the whole piece to it. But, can we talk about being 31st?
I don't get it.
that's kind of insane. That's kind of it's sad. It's 50 states. We're 9 away from the very bottom. What does that actually look like? And what does it look like to be number one on that list? Or even just higher on that list, like, as far as the economic impact and the kind of things that you have available for your citizens and stuff like that. I'm sure like LA has some crazy number and and as they should, but how could we make ours be more?
Well, I guess you got to first know what the criteria is to move up those rankings, right? We should just have Kelly on for a future episode to find out what those rankings are.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, thank you so much for being with us today. This is all we have for you. If you're interested in finding out more about that criteria, check us out in a future episode so we can bring Kelly back on. Until then, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you on the next one.
See you on the next one. This episode of the Eugene Morning Hustle podcast was brought to you by the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce and sponsored by Ivan Torres of Business Block Studios and Brandon Miller Voiceover. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel where you get your podcasts and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay in the know. If you have any questions, topics, or guests you'd like us to dive into, send us a voice message on the Eugene Chamber Instagram page, and we'll feature you and your question on a future episode. Or shoot us an email at podcast@eugenechamber.com. Till next time, Eugene.